Oh, it's got a touchscreen too.
Oh my goodness, this is going to smooth things so well. This is incredible. Well, hello everybody. Welcome in to our Game Dev Meeting. Congrats on finding the spot. We appreciate you coming out here and getting all cozy in here at our new location for 2025. So let's go over some order of operations. We've got our intro, which I'm so generously providing right here and now, along with a couple other bits of additional news that we'll be going over with it being the new year. We've got some stuff on elections and not listed in our order of operations. At the end, we're hoping to put together a little bit of an open discussion about some big things that have been happening in the community lately that we're trying to get some community feedback on how best to proceed with it. But we'll go through our announcements. We'll have a spot for community plugs if anybody has anything they'd like to share that they've been working on. And then we'll get into our main presentation, very generously provided by Cris Strenth. So welcome in. If you're a first-time attendee, any first-time attendees? Incredible. Thank you so much for showing up. So, little intro spiel. IGDA events aim to provide a safe and inclusive environment for everyone who makes games or is interested in game development, whether this is your first event or if you've lost count. No matter if you're here in person or watching online, we're thrilled you're here. IGDA Twin Cities is an all-volunteer organization. This is our board. You might see a couple familiar faces throughout the room. If you ever have any questions or concerns, any problems at any of our events or in any of our spaces online, feel free to reach out to us or contact the board via email at igdatwincities@gmail.com or find us individually on the Discord by name or via the role at IGDATC board. And if you're interested in serving on the board, our next election is coming up, and we'll go over some processes and procedures quite shortly. The election will be at our Gamedev meeting officially in March 2025. We also have volunteer spaces. We can't do this alone, and I know, new slots for 2025. The differences and the boundaries between being a board member and being a volunteer are in fact quite slim. So if authority scares you, but you're interested in contributing to your community or providing an event, service, some other thing that you'd like to do to help the organization grow or improve, just reach out to any of us board members on the Discord and talk with us about what you're interested in, and we can help you get set up with that. We reset our list of volunteers for 2025. So if you're used to seeing your face up here, or if you'd like to see your face up here, reach out to Beth or I and send us a picture, and we'll get you up there. Yeah, exactly. You know.
It doesn't have to be much.
It's a duocracy. So we have many recurring regular events, if you're interested, many of them occurring on Wednesdays, 6:30 to 9:30, so congratulations, you've made it to our Game Dev meeting. But the first Wednesday of every month, we have Devs Play Games. It's a social event where people come together, play board games, and discuss the things they're working on, just life, general, casual meetup stuff. Our Game Dev meeting, very regular industry and community presentations, and then afterwards networking it's going to be Max tonight. It's going to be Max tonight. Yes, if you're coming with us for food, you won't be able to miss it. We will all be moving.
If you get lost on the way, that's kind of unusual.
Yeah. It's like a stone's throw away. Right. I always picture like a mac and cheese restaurant, so the first couple times I was thrown. Our third event of the Wednesdays is going to be our Twin Cities playtest here at Noble Robot. All of these events, except our fourth, are at Noble Robot, where local developers can bring versions of their games that they're working on to have our guests playtest and show off sort of where they're at with it and get valuable feedback from our community. This can be done in person or remotely. If you're interested in that in any capacity, send Mark a DM on our Discord, or reach out to us in any way, and we will funnel you to Mark.
Or exist, and Mark will arrest you.
Yeah, ask you for
your.
Yeah. It's a life or death situation out here. And our fourth Wednesday event is our MNVR HCI Special Interest Group at REM5 Studios, now in West End. The location has changed, the name is the same. This is a special interest group focused on VR, AR, and HCI, a mixture of presentations and demos and discussions. And any of the events marked with that live indicator can be found live streamed and recorded on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/IGDATC. We also have special interest group events on Saturdays, the third Saturday of every month. We have our Women in Games gathering, 6:30 to 8:30 here at Noble Robot. And we're looking to put together some other special interest groups in like early 2025. We've got some things in the works, but if you have any thoughts, ideas, or things that you're interested in putting together, something that you're really passionate about, that you want to get a bunch of other people in a room and who are passionate about it and talk about it, reach out to us, once again, any of our board members, or just talk to anybody, and someone will pretty please, I'm trusting all of you, will funnel it to someone who has some sort of official executive power, and we'll make it happen. Any info that you might look for in more detail is on our events info channel on the Discord server. We got the Twin Cities playtest. We just went over this, but really to hammer this home, we need your games. If you are a game developer, which I assume is the majority of you because you're in this room at this event in this community, you probably have a project or game or some sort of interactive demo that you could show to someone. And that someone should be our community next Wednesday in this room. If you've got any questions, it can truly be in any state of polish. It could be like you can press 3 buttons and something sort of happens. Bring it here. We've got a space for it, especially if you reach out in advance to Mark LaCroix at Mark LaCroix on our Discord, or just send a message in the Twin Cities Playtest channel on our Discord. We got options for PC mobile games, send a build, or just send any sort of version that people can, any sort of means of playing this game. We got room for tabletop games and mobile games and PC games. Anything your heart desires. Send us your games. I feel like I hammered that home pretty well. You can.
I don't have to do that aggressive push because Sam is just covering.
I'm getting there. I'm getting
Are you
there.
all like appropriately threatened because?
Yeah. Lock in, guys. It's game time. Also, if you have something last minute, like if you just finish, you push an update and you're like, oh, this could be play tested, or like this would be useful to get some eyes on this, you could show up with a laptop, set it up, and we'll help find a space for you. It can be as spur of the moment or as planned in advance as you would like. We have options for any sort of approach. And if you're interested in further discussion, here are some other Discord channels on our Discord that you should know about. We have our Games and Projects, which is now a forum channel. We've been seeing a lot of activity in there recently, which has been very exciting. Post about your projects in there. Get feedback from people, post devlogs, updates, anything that you would like to use your posts in that forum channel for. Go and do it now. Put your projects in there. And we also have events channels with channels for each of our different like recurring events, so that if you're interested in some discussions from the previous events, if you met someone tonight and then tomorrow you're like, who the heck was that? Send out a message. Or if you had some thoughts following up on that, feel free to keep the discussion going in that channel. We also have some channels for specific disciplines and tools if you're interested in getting into more in-depth discussions with anybody in our community. We got all different kinds of options. Get in our Discord, play around in there, yap a little. We also have various different ways that you can support IGDA Twin Cities. If you're interested, we have IGDA TC merch. Do we have any merch wearers in the house? We got one merch wearer. Incredible. Thank you. Pillar of the community. Thank you. We have many different logo, color, style combinations, and more, all at igdatc.org/merch. And if you're interested, if you got a game project that you would like to donate art assets to this community, you can do that. You can provide any assets that you're interested in sharing. That can be like a title, splash icon, anything. And it would be on that store page available, and any revenue would be supporting IGDA Twin Cities. So if you're interested in giving some support to the community, that is an option we have available. So quick shout out, quick thank you to our sponsors. Thank you, Noble Robot, for hosting like 90% of our events.
It's gone on
We're looking into other options, but it has been a huge cornerstone, and thank you to Mark for providing the space to us and letting us host all of our in-person things here, except for the MNVRHCI meeting. Thank you very much, REM5, for providing that space for our community members there. Yeah, round of applause. So if you're interested in any of the services that these different locations provide, check out their websites. Both pretty cool. Desks are available here if you're interested in co-working. Check it out. Talk to Mark. So for our other general announcements, Nice Games Alliance. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so we announced at the holiday party, some of you were there, some of you weren't, that we formed a nonprofit organization to sort of sponsor our activities. And it's called Nice Games Alliance. And it is a 501c3 public charity, which means you can give us money and you can get a tax deduction. So go to nicegames.org, and you can do a recurring amount or just a one-time donation. That's going to get us sort of started on our feet. We're looking to apply for grants and get corporate sponsorships and grants and stuff like that. But I think the sort of getting the ball rolling, it'd be great if we can get some support directly from the community, because a lot of the volunteers, board members, they put on, they put a lot of their own resources into the organization. And I think it's time for all of you to step up, is what I'm saying.
Can I piggyback off that?
Yes, Dale?
Women in Games is not this Saturday, but the next Saturday. But there's always treats, and it's usually pie.
Right.
So if you're on the fence about coming,
Free pie.
Right. So that's the kind of thing where, like, costs real dollars. So if you've got a couple and you thought that this organization's community has had any value to you, that's a place to start. Our ambitions are greater than just paying for stuff or for snacks, although that is a supreme ambition of ours as well. We want to, fund more programs, do more workshops and events and stuff like that that cost money. That isn't just us like getting together. And, we've gotten really good at doing things for no money, but we're seeing if we can try something else. So that's the big news on that. So if you have any questions about that, you can talk to either Samurai or Trenton. All three of us are on the board of this new organization. And if you want more details on how all that stuff works, we can, there's a link in the Discord in the Nice Games Alliance discussion channel, which sort of outlines a lot of what the organization is, if you're not already familiar, if you weren't at the holiday party. Does anyone have any questions about that now, as long as I've got all of you?
Yeah, I know that this is not like a dues-paying chapter more,
Right.
But could some maybe rolled into that, like saying that this could be considered dues?
So so the question was about IDDA is a dues-paying organization, the parent org, but we as a local community have never asked for any membership fees. You're asking if, just for the people online, you're asking if that would be something that we could consider. Generally, our philosophy as a IDGA board and as the new board of Nice Games Alliance is that we don't want to do that because we want, because the mission of both organizations is access. And so that puts a burden on us a little bit to, beg for money. But I think that's appropriate because people should be able to feel free to just show up to see if it's for them, without having to make a commitment, and also to be feeling comfortable feeling part of the community, even if they aren't, if they don't have the means or something. That's an important aspect to us, especially as we try to increase the types of people who have access to the resources that we provide and are available in the industry. So it is a really, it's good that you asked because it's a very good idea. It's just not the idea for the way we're structured, I think. And I think it's important that people kind of know that that's part of the mission. So yeah, that's why we have to pay all you for cash. But again, our larger ambitions are government grants, corporate grants. We want to rely as little on individual contributions as we can, but we're still going to beg at every opportunity for individual contributions. So get used to that. And I want to say a bunch of people have already stepped up and donated. We even have a couple of people who have done monthly contributions. So, we're not quite all the way towards paying for tons of pizza at every event, but we're like baby steps. I'm really pleased to see that the reaction has already been pretty good. We've got a couple people already, forking over.
Maybe get like a slice or two and raffle it out, maybe?
Maybe, yeah. We'll distribute it across all 60 plus events we do for the year, just to give you an idea of how much pizza we actually need to cover our operations. That should be our line item budget, is just how much pizza the organization consists of. Any other questions about it before we move past this?
For those of us that haven't read up on all the information yet, are there any plans to make public information about any of the donations received? I'm not familiar with any of this kind of thing, so I'm just curious.
Do you mean disclose who has donated?
More disclose how much funding is available for certain things.
Oh, I see. Oh, just having the budget open, the books
Right.
open. I think that's a good idea. I think we need to discuss exactly how useful that information is versus how difficult it would be to provide it, on an up to date basis. I think we should always be, if you are interested, you should just talk to any of the board members and we can get you that info. You know what I mean? It's not something we're interested in keeping a secret. And certainly as we grow, certainly as we get funding from other sources, I think it's an important part of our governance, because we're community supported, to be as open about that as possible. But we're just not quite there where we can build an infrastructure for that. But it's something to keep in mind. So ask again as we get further.
Yeah, I was thinking about it in terms of hey, if we get this amount of money, we can pay for pizza or something.
Sure, kind of a thermometer goal kind of thing. Yep, that's a strategy. Fundraising sort of activities and how we're actually going to make a real good go of it. That's something that we actually would love volunteer help on. So I think that's something we're gonna have to organize. We're going to do maybe another volunteer meeting, get some brainstorming going, and we'll talk more about that are kind of just hijacked it. But at the end of the night, we're going to do a longer, open-ended conversation about Nice Games Alliance. So forgive me for sort of jump-starting that already. So we'll move on for now. Global Game Jam's happening this month. Also here, surprise, surprise, we have We have like over 30 people signed up, and it is hybrid, so you can participate online if you like. But what that means is, at a certain point, we're not going to be able to fit any more people in here. So we're going to have use of other spaces in the building, so it's not just this room. So don't get panicked if you're like, where will I sit? You know, I have. Trent wants to know if we can go over to the rafters. Honestly, I have investigated it, and the answer is no. I mean, there's like, you know, fire code, but also just generally, it's not anyway. But we'll have space for folks. We had a bunch of help putting it together last year, and you know, so it's going to be a great go of it. I'm really, really excited. I'm struggling to come up with anything to say. It was just great last year. We had a really good time, and I'm really looking forward to doing it again this year. Question in front row.
Will there be a call for chairs or tables?
Scott, can you bring some chairs or tables? Okay. I know there were a bunch of people. I'm going to be reaching out to all of you. Many of them are in this room for exactly what we need and what the configuration of our space is going to be, because there's still a couple questions for that. So lots of planning. Now, the hybrid component, we're going to be on Discord again. We've partnered with Amber Waves of Games in previous years. I think this year we're going to do it ourselves, is kind of the... We don't have a lot of time left to set it up. Yeah. It's not like it's a huge deal. It's just we need some people to help run it. So if you're interested in helping to facilitate Discord communication between teams, and even if you're here, that could be something you can do. If that's something that interests you, get in touch with the board. I think it's just been on our to-do list, and we haven't asked if anybody would want to help out with it. So I thought I would throw that call out there now. But the idea is that hybrid teams or remote teams, they can work at home, but also they can partner with people who are here. We have a teleconference room here for people who want to have live meetings, or you can just chat on Discord like you do. And we had a couple of mixed teams in previous years here, and that's been a pretty successful operation to sort of let more people participate who can't either make the trip out here or just prefer to work at home. But the facilitating that is a job. So if someone wants to help out with that, please let us know. All right, community plugs. I've taken over the meeting now. Sam, do you want it back?
I don't particularly.
Everyone, we want Sam to have the meeting back, right? Yes, that's what I thought.
Well, it's an honor. You guys flatter me. Oh my goodness. So community plugs. This is a section for anybody if they would like to share anything related to a game release, development news, any sort of events or meetups, something cool you've seen, something new you're working on, looking for help, looking for work, anything else, anything your heart desires, something you would like to share for the good of the community. This is your moment. Take the lead, Josh.
All right, so I know we all just got over going to, various cons and whatnot, but there's a con coming up in April called VGM Con. It's about video games, it's about music, it's about mashing those things together. It's a really great time. So if you're looking for a con to attend in the next few months, I strongly recommend that. It is in Plymouth, I think. So yes, somewhere in that area. It's not too far from, it's in the Twin Cities. There's a website, look it up. There'll be more information than I can provide here.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so I'm not affiliated with them, but the Games Done Quick speedrunning marathon is active this week. It's going until Saturday. I've watched it for many years. I'm sure people are familiar with what speedrunning is, but it's a whole week-long, 24-hour thing in support of charity. And even if you've never watched a speedrun before, I'd highly recommend checking it out because it can be very entertaining, and it's a fun way to see games that you haven't seen before, and the various ways they can be broken, which is in its own way a kind of interesting view into the way that games are developed and the consequences that has. If you want to check it out, tonight starting at 10:30 is a fan favorite, The Awful Block, where they play games that are terrible, ridiculous, funny, or whatever else to whet your appetite. Superman 64, Golf with Your Grandmother, Rex Ronan, Experimental Surgeon, and more will be coming up this evening. They upload VODs to YouTube as well, so if you're curious, check it out.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice, going thrice. Seems like we're good. We've got a couple that are just regular recurring ones. We got an IP law clinic. I don't recall if this is still open or not, but if you're interested in pro bono legal assistance in matters involving intellectual property, such as copyrightable works, trademarks, patents, and confidentiality obligations, they're providing this opportunity. I'm pretty sure still. And if they're, I figure if they're not providing it now still, they will probably be providing it again in the future because it is with the U of M, provided by their U of M law students. So if you're interested in something like that, follow this QR code, should bring you to their site where there will probably be more updated, accurate info on timelines for things like
The
that.
website talks about a course offered in spring semester.
Okay.
Spring 2025. intellectual property.
Okay, sounds promising. So probably in the coming months. We've also got Nice Games Club, a podcast run by Mark, Ellen, and Steven, all community members, discussing various topics related to game design development, conducting interviews, doing 1-hour game jams, and more. Got some new recent episodes that you can check out at nicegames.club. Check it out. It's really fun. Oh, hi, Joanna. You're in here. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's crazy. Jealous. Oh my goodness. We've got another recurring thing, Jam a Jam. This is my baby. This is my thing. 48-hour asset jam at the very first full weekend of every month, where people are invited to create one asset. It can be a prop, sprite, audio, sound effect, like sound effect pack, a song, shaders, scripts, etc., based on a different theme of each month. So if you're familiar with a game jam, similar concept, but just really pared down, focused on one individual asset for use in some sort of theoretical game. We've got some of our winners from last month, and you can join our Discord by following that QR code. And the only fun twist is, thanks to the timing of the new year, we're actually holding our January Jam a Jam this coming weekend. We bumped it back by a weekend, so if you're interested, this January Jam will be this coming weekend rather than the weekend that always happens just before this event. But otherwise, be prepared for the first weekend, full weekend of every single month. The Jam a Jam Jam. The Jam a Jam. That's what I'm saying. Jam Jam Jam. So now that you've gotten another taste, anybody else? Going once. Oh.
I didn't come prepared to say anything.
That's what this space is for.
Yeah.
So,
What do we got?
my dad and I are working
Got
on, I think I can speak loud and clearly enough. My dad and I have been working on a physics-based multiplayer game where you throw magnetic debris at each other to try and knock each other off of a ring. It's called Pharaoh Fighters, and yeah, I've been occasionally poking around on the Discord, looking for help, maybe making assets, like the 3D models of the things you play as.
If anybody is interested in that, and if you're interested in providing a more in-depth overview of what you're looking for once you've had the time for it. Yeah, there is a spot for that on our Discord. We have a job postings section that you could post an overview of kind of what you're looking for at your leisure, of course, and then people can respond to it, reach out to you, get in touch with you as they're interested. It also sounds like something that I would love to see next week at the Twin Cities playtest.
Dad's the one working on the physics, so I've got to make sure it's ready to present.
Gotcha. Well, yes, exactly. Pretty please. All right, final call. I swear. Pinky promise. Anybody else? Let's go.
All right, I'm David. I'm one of the main programmers on a project called Gin Hunter, and we've got the playtest coming up next weekend. So not next weekend, sorry, next Wednesday. So come and check it out. Come play it. Provide some awesome feedback. Much appreciated. What was that?
How do you spell it?
Oh, Jinn.
Okay.
Hunter. Yeah.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Da-da-ba? Anybody? Anybody? Okay, we'll call it good for this month. So we'll now invite up Cris to give a wonderful presentation.
Actually, Sam, we got the.
I see. I'm so sorry for the big. Take it away, Mark.
There is one seat in the front.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say a couple of people have rolled in. Let's take a second to get folks seated. It's like when you're at a conference, they're like, move in, everybody.
All seats that are open are welcome.
There's one on that couch too.
Incredible.
Oh no, what happened to it? Oh, what? All right, everybody as comfortable as they're gonna get? Yeah. Okay. All right, so. Maybe a little bit, I don't know. All right. So the board member elections, we did this process for the first time last year. We were really happy with how it went. We're going to try it again. And it's a 3-meeting process. That's how handholdy we're going to be about it, but we think that works. And this is the first of the 3 meetings. This is where we announce the election. We talked about it at the holiday party, but this is the official announcement. Nominations will open tonight. So the terms of and elections, how the board membership works, that is available at ighcc.org/governance. There's a whole document on how it works. And I will sort of walk you through some of the details, but if you really want to get the actual specifics, it's laid out in detail on there. There's a link on the homepage as well if you don't know how to spell governance, because sometimes it... So the timeline here, this meeting, just what I said, we're going to open the nominations. It says online nominations begin. Whoops, I'm just now remembering in this moment I haven't put up that Google form yet. So tomorrow the nominations will begin. Somebody remind me for the end of the night. At the next meeting, a month from now, the in-person nominations will happen. So if you didn't submit a thing but you want to nominate somebody, that will happen at that meeting. You can stand up and say, I nominate this cool dude or person or whatever. You cannot nominate yourself. That is a key thing. You have to have a pal. But they can be anybody and you can be anybody. So it's sort of, well, you know, there are rules. Online voting will begin, and I'll hopefully have the thing up by then as the meeting instead of having to wait a day. And then the third meeting will be the election meeting. That will be where we actually hold the election. People can, we'll have an online form, but you can, if you forgot, we'll remind everybody to do it at that meeting. But in between the second and third meeting, the vote is open, so you can vote early. The process for that I'll describe in a bit, but the way is that not everyone comes to every meeting, so we have it work this way, so everyone has an opportunity to participate, and there's no opportunity. If you forget, it's really on you. So the summary for the way the board works is that a board term lasts 24 months. We hold elections every year. There's no term limits. Current board members whose terms are expired, such as myself, can stand for re-election. New candidates must be nominated by another community member. All candidates will provide statements to the community. So if you are nominated, you can decline if you wish, but if you want the post, you just you answer some questions, and then that will be available for everybody to read. So don't worry if you don't know a lot of people in the community. It's, you know, we try to make it as not as much a popularity contest as it could be. If you've got ideas and you really want to, like, you know, something for the community, don't worry about being popular. That's not necessarily the only way to join the board. Energy is what it takes, really. Voters can vote for multiple candidates, but not the same person twice. And the number of votes you get is determined by how many open seats and how many candidates there are. It's a formula. It's hilarious. But this way, you can vote for all your friends generally. Like, you shouldn't have to make a ton of hard choices as part of the idea, because we are a community of pals, and so it's competitive, but we don't want it to be cutthroat. Open seats are won by highest vote getters, and then it descends in sequence. And then if there's a tie, we don't do, as much as I'm a believer in ranked choice voting, that is something that is actually kind of difficult, because you may have 3 or 4 people who you like equally and you picked one, and having to pick them again is kind of a burden. So ties are resolved by die roll, because you can always just be a volunteer. A candidate must receive at least a quarter of the total vote. So because we have no membership, you can just be here and participate. We want to make sure that there isn't any exploit available. We're game developers after all. We want to guard against cheating. And one of those is that you got to get at least a quarter of the people to support you, even if there aren't a lot of candidates and aren't a lot of voters. So we think that works. We haven't had any edge cases yet. We've only done this once, so. So why would you want to serve on the board? So maybe you are an existing volunteer, or you want to volunteer some more to help run one of our regular events. Maybe you want to help manage the online presence, so either the Discord or the website, to bring in more people. You want to guide or change policy. Maybe there's something that we're doing that you don't agree with. Like, that's what this is for. It's not just to like, oh, I'm with this team, let's join this team. Your voice matters. So if you have something that you want to change, that's a reason to run as well. If you have a project that you think the IDGA would be a good home for, that would be a great place to do it from. You'll get the support from the community. You can, maybe access Nice Games Alliance funds. We'll see how that goes. But if you have something that you think would be useful to be done in this organization, that would be a good place, a good reason to join the board. And if you just want to bring more people and more resources, you just want to, you want to be involved, right? It's not a specific list of tasks necessarily for, why you want to. Once the board meets, then we start distributing actual tasks, and you'll be part of that. Who is allowed to serve on the board? Anybody, right? We don't have any qualifications. If you're not a professional developer, if you haven't shipped a game, who cares? Nobody cares. Now, in previous years, the rules is that the board members must be a dues-paying member of the parent org. That is something that, in light of recent relationship issues with the parent org, we are reconsidering, but the board needs to vote on that. This is something that the parent org is a rule that they have, but they have never once enforced it. And so we're not that interested in enforcing it either. We haven't so much as checked on the recent board, but that is technically what our bylaws state. But IGDATC is not a legal entity, so it's only as much as we trust ourselves to follow our own rules. But that's a rule we may change, but it's not just going to change because of a motion. We have to vote on that. So that's more needed to know about that clause. And actually, IDGA membership is not something I would say you don't do. It can have benefits, and it's not a huge burden. It doesn't cost that much, but it's not something that we're that excited about as a requirement any longer. So that, just be aware. You must commit to attend a bunch of events. You have to attend at least 3/4 of the board meetings. We do it once a month. And you must live in the state of Minnesota. Now, if you don't, you can still be on the board. We just got to vote you in and make an exception. So if you're a special case, if you travel a lot, or you are moving in 6 months but still want to stay involved remotely, like, that might actually be a good reason to be on the board. So, it's not out of you. Just the board needs to decide if that's okay. Nominations. So nominees can be any person, but must be nominated by a community member, which is to say that anybody who is part of the community. So it's a pretty, this is the way we've defined it in previous years. This could be evolved, but essentially, if you're around, you can nominate someone. A nomination can be done in 2 ways. So the online form that is, I swear, will be ready tomorrow. That will be a way to nominate someone. Basically, you just pick someone, you say why, you provide contact information to that person so we can get in touch with them to see if they're interested. You don't need to coordinate with that person. If you just want to secretly nominate someone because you think they'd be good, like, go at it. Like, but you could also coordinate. You could say, like, hey, we're pals, would you like to nominate me? It's like, you can do some politicking, it's allowed. And then next month at the nomination meeting, you can just do it in person. So you'll have another reminder then. Yeah, you should use method of contact. There's just some very specific things. You can't nominate more than 2 people, and you may not yourself be nominated by another candidate. So there's politicking, but again, we're trying to guard against exploits. Unless you're interested in exploiting it, you shouldn't have to worry about any of this stuff. The candidates can be nominated by one community member. That's allowed. Current board members who choose to run are automatically, they don't need to be separately nominated. And then during the nomination meeting, if you want, you can you can share who you want to nominate. You can do a little support, speech on their behalf if you like. That is an option. And if you're nominated and you're like, excuse me, then you can just say no. It's not, don't worry about it. Candidates will have to provide a short statement. This will happen between February and March. We'll have the details for that next month. And it's just in the past we did just a couple of question survey. Yeah. Sam, you did it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't so bad.
A couple questions.
It wasn't so, but Sam did it, guys. It's fine.
If I can do it, anybody can do it.
And then basically at the election meeting, we would like all candidates to attend that meeting. And if you do that virtually, we'll arrange it where you can sort of present and talk about your answers and your candidacy. If you don't, you're still on the ballot, but we would like it if you did. It also gives you a better chance of winning. Yeah, any sort of format of it, we just determine every year. We don't have that written in the thing, just because we try to figure it out as we go. The election, everyone can vote, including board members and candidates. Voters vote for multiple candidates, and the formula is here written on the screen. I'm not going to read it out, but basically the idea is that you want to be able to vote for many people, but you also don't want to have you don't want to have so many votes that it becomes kind of random, which is something that can happen when you have multiple votes. And so we determine that based on how many people are running and how many open seats there are, so that the number of votes people have can actually reflect what they want without forcing them to pick between two people, because that can be something that people don't like to do. Or it could be something that can introduce randomness, because they like people equally, they flip a coin, and then who wins is basically a coin flip, and we never know that. So that's the game design involved in all of this. So here's the examples that I have, which is basically what I described. And right now we're going to have 4 open seats because the board is full, and 4 members are either have to run for re-election or their seat will be open. So these examples say 5 or whatever. But okay, the election results. We need a minimum voter participation level. So if no one shows up to the March meeting, say there's a big snowstorm, or say no one fills out the online form, we'll just push it off to the next meeting. We want to make sure that the community actually has a say. Candidates are elected in order of greatest votes. I said this kind of already. And then we have I just detailed that stuff already. All right, we do second and third ballots based on rolling a die. So you can continue to tie until you don't, basically. These are just more examples of how that would work. This is all in the governance document as well, which is why I'm kind of breezing through this now, because I can see the glassy eyes that you're already all having. So the form and the ballot will be at this URL. So once I put the thing up there, it'll always be at this URL. The links will be there. So you don't need to worry about a new Google form link or whatever like that. That'll just be there. Right now you'll go there and you'll see last year's, and they will be closed, and that'll be kind of what it looks like. So again, somebody remind me at the end of the night. Okay, that's the end of that. Okay. Anybody have any questions about that process? Because I was kind of speed running it toward the end there. Everybody excited to have community governance? Yeah? Scott, it depends on who's on the board whether there will be pizza or not. Okay, so Sam, the meeting's yours again.
All right.
So, yeah.
Thank you for passing the mic back to me, Mark. I'm now going to pass the mic to Chris. We'll just have this as our little backdrop.
That'll work.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Or you don't have slides.
No.
Okay, then you're good.
Nah, this is me just rambling for about an hour. So, evening. How y'all doing? Awesome. So, my name is Cris Strenth. I am an HR manager for Activision Blizzard. Been there for about 2.5-ish years. This April will actually be 3. Oh my God, almost 3 years now. Good Lord. I'm also Vanispheres on Twitch. I've been streaming for about 6 years now, doing primarily RPGs, like currently running through Veilguard right now. I also do cooking streams, and I've very much got addicted to Marvel Rivals. So, anybody else playing that? A couple folks? What's your mains? Not enough for me? Hawkeye? Oh, same. Nice. Yep.
I considered playing it, but I don't have money to get it.
It's free. It's lovely.
They always say that.
They stream. Yeah. So this is the exact same talk I gave at PAX West, which again, I do want to thank Josh for inviting me to come and give this talk. Essentially, this is my life story and how that kind of led me into the gaming industry. And yeah, so before we kind of get into that, I do have a couple of quick things. One is just from a quick reminder that thoughts and opinions are my own and do not reflect my companies or any previous employers I've ever had. 2, that this is also just me, like I said, sharing my story. This is not like any sort of attempt of recruiting or anything like that. This is just me kind of sharing some fun stories of, that happened over the last 40-something years. So there's a couple of kind of things I always kind of start with is, why am I doing this? One is, I have a very, very passionate sort of approach with gaming in general, which we'll kind of talk about in a little bit here. And I've known basically since I was a kid, I always wanted to work in gaming, and the fact that I get the opportunity to do that now, while also still be able to stream on Twitch and do these kinds of talks, really means a lot. The other is sort of also kind of demystify HR. So show of hands here, who's ever had to talk to HR before? Keep them up if you were terrified before walking in. Yeah. So professionally, I've been doing HR for about 14 years. I genuinely absolutely love what I do for a living. My job generally is to help people. Like that is it. Is just if I can walk away every day saying I helped somebody for the day, I've done my job. So, and the fact I now get to do it in an industry that I absolutely adore is been a real treat and a real joy. One other thing before I actually kind of get into the story itself is I do also kind of do a bit of a content warning on here. Part of it is telling my life story is going to include some fairly heavy topics in there as well. I'll kind of let y'all know when I get to that point but it gets a bit heavy, particularly when we start talking about my parents and all that. So just kind of a heads up for it. Just want to make sure people are aware of that. So yeah, thoughts and opinions of my own, not discussing, and also not discussing news events or anything, just again, out of respect for my employer. So with that, out of curiosity here, just kind of like shout it out, what is the first memory you have of playing a game? Like what was the title of the game?
Mario 2.
Mario 2? Minecraft? Okay.
Lego Star Wars.
Nice.
Asteroids.
Asteroids?
Frozen Theater.
Nice.
Mario Land 2.
Oh my, good balls. Excellent.
Which one? Load Runner.
Oh my god, good callbacks here.
Dark Castle.
Ooh. Respect. So mine was Popeye for the NES, and I remember that because my parents got that for me. Oh, lovely. Okay, cool. So yeah, the Surface. Yeah, cool. So my parents had got me a Nintendo when I was about 5 years old because they both worked in healthcare, and they thought that, or they read a study that video games can help out with hand-eye coordination, which my parents thought would be phenomenal for sports. And I have a joke lined up right after this too, and you already know the punchline for it. I think just this general vibe kind of gives off. I never really turned out to be an athlete. But yeah, the next year they actually did give me a soccer ball, and I was like, "What is this? What's going on with this?" So it was pretty early on they realized like sports is really not going to be a thing for me. I lived in San Antonio, Texas, most of my life, and I lived in a subdivision right by SeaWorld, where I was the only kid within about a 2-mile radius. So my parents grew up in the 40s and 50s, where you had the neighborhood kids, and you were able to go outside and play until it gets dark, and then you come back in for dinner and all that kind of stuff. There was nobody to play with when I was a kid. So for me, it was just my Nintendo. That's all I ever had. So, and I was absolutely hooked on it from Mario Brothers 1 all the way up through. I don't really think it's a Mario game I never liked. I actually come to think of it. But yeah, it was a huge part of who I was, and there was like I mentioned, like my parents were really wanting an athlete. They didn't get that, and because again, this was before video games are a lot more, I think, culturally acceptable now, where it is basically everyone now plays games. And like anytime I was a kid and I got into trouble, like if I got like a C on a test or something like that, my mom's threat was that the Nintendo will get thrown away. Which for a kid who's like, again, with no friends nearby because they're all on the other side of town, that's terrifying. That was absolutely terrifying for me as a kid. Thankfully, she never did, but yeah, it was a kind of a weird way to grow up, where it was just something like every time I tried to share that passion that I had for gaming, that, like, oh my god, I just did this thing in like Zelda, I cleared through the first dungeon ever as a kid. It was like, that was a huge deal for me. Parents like, I don't know what that is. Like, cool. Yeah, so it was kind of a weird way to grow up. My dad was a director of clinical engineering, but he grew up also understanding the importance of technology, and he built me my first computer when I was 2 years old. I knew how to type probably before I knew how to write, probably. Like it was just something that was pretty much ingrained in me since birth. But the same thing, he wanted an athlete, and this is kind of like the heavy moment I was talking about. I do skip around a little bit in the story, so you have to forgive me a bit on this, but around 7th grade, I was a bit of a heavier kid, and was just waiting outside for my dad to pick me up, and it's just this giant field in front of the school, and there was just a flagpole without a flag, so just a pole. And my friends just decided this is gonna be the time where we're all gonna climb up the pole and see who can do it the fastest. And I have no upper body strength, and I kept trying, I just couldn't do it, and just, kids will be kids, and they kind of pointed that out. So Dad comes to pick me up and says, he can see I'm kind of down, asking, like, oh, what's wrong? And I told him about the thing. He's like, well, we can go to a park on after we drop off your stuff, and I can teach you how to climb. It's not that big of a deal. And I was like, all right, I get it. And as soon as we get home, I drop off my bag in my room, and then Dad just comes in out of nowhere and says, you know what? You cannot climb that pole. In fact, all you're gonna do is sit in front of that bleeping TV and play your video games all day, and that's gonna be it for the rest of your life. Like, you better marry somebody young and who's gonna be able to take care of you, because you'll be 500 pounds before you're 30, and that's it. This is gonna be your whole thing. I was like, and then he just walked out. And that one hit hard. It hit really, really hard for me. Years later, I would talk to him about that, and he kind of sort of brushed it off of going like, I was just trying to motivate you. It was just sort of, let's see, but like, you turned out fine. So first life lesson I ever got from that was therapy. Even if you think you're fine, if you don't think you need therapy, still go. That one impacted me quite a bit growing up. So kind of going back chronologically forward too. So like I said, grew up with the NES generation. Super Nintendo comes out. It's Christmas time. My parents asked me what I want. Easiest answer in the world, I want a Super Nintendo. And so that year comes around, and like it's underneath the tree, and you can just see that rectangular box, and you're like, I know what that is. Like, I think a lot of kids, especially if you grew up in the 80s, you kind of did this, where you kind of lift it up, you're kind of shaking it around a little bit, you can hear the styrofoam, and you're like, oh my god, it's here. And then you can see like 2 extra boxes to the side of it, about the size of an SNES box. Like, I know what this is. I still got my Super Nintendo. I got 2 games. It's gonna be so amazing. Oh my god. And sure enough, that Christmas, I opened up opened up my presents, and I did get my Super Nintendo, and I got 2 games that came with it. So obviously Mario World came with it, but I got Gradius 3, because my dad was super into space shooters and stuff, so something he and I could play, and a copy of Final Fantasy 2, now referred to as 4. And that game changed me, honestly. Final Fantasy did. Because up to that point, I mean, realistically, there was games with stories that were leading up to that point, but they were obviously pretty simplistic for the time. But I ended up really sitting down that summer after I got my Super Nintendo, and when I really started to play the game. And for those who have not played it before, the game starts off with a character named Cecil, who is a Dark Knight, and the reason he is one is because the King of Baron said, that's what you are. You are going to be a Dark Knight. That is your thing. We will train you to do that. End of story. But it never sat right with him. And like being told, like, you're always going to be this one thing, and then at some point he had to face that demons towards probably about the 30% mark of the game, realize that is not who he's supposed to be, that doesn't fit right for him, that doesn't feel right, and that he could be something else. And there becomes like a whole arc where he becomes a paladin. And the scene where it's very much for those who never played the game before, it's very much a flip the switch, and it just switches from the Dark Knight armor into a paladin. And I will never ever forget that moment, because it was just something that I played, a medium that I absolutely adored, had a moment that just hit with me personally of saying, like, you do not have to be the person that your parents think you're going to be. And that completely changed my perspective. It was around that point, it's when also, like, it's, about like, I think about 8 or 9 years old at that point, where you start trying to figure out your own identity and your own personality and things like that. And that was a huge defining moment for who I was. And to the point when we came back to school that next semester, that's all I wanted to talk about was that game. And I was very fortunate that I also went to school with some folks who were also hardcore gamers. And I found my folks. Like, I found my niche of friends who we could, sit before school, during lunches, after school, and that's all we would do, is we would just talk about games. And like, when I tell you that they saved me as a kid, I mean that in every sense of the word for it. So, so one of the other kind of life lessons I picked up from that was, you cannot choose your relatives, but you can choose your family. And I was very fortunate that I was able to find the folks who understood me and like appreciated my geekiness, because they were also just as geeky, and it meant a lot to me growing up. Yeah. Sorry, this kind of part hits a little harder for that. Anyway, so, Also, with that note, please cherish your friends for it too. So fast forward to a few years later, I get my first real job. Well, I take it back. My first actual job was working at a movie theater in San Antonio during the year of. Some of these movies might be older than some of the folks here. Chicken Run, the first X-Men movie, the first Fast and Furious, first Scary Movie, something else. There was a couple, but it was that generation of films. About 3 months later, I turned 17, and that is the starting age to work at Electronics Boutique. Not EB Games, not GameStop, but Electronics Boutique. And the day I turned 17, I called up the manager of the store who I was working at, or the store that was nearby my house. I said, "Hey, I just turned 17," and he's like, "Cool, you start next week." I was like, "Awesome." Went to the movie theater, dropped off my stuff, and never came back. It's glorious. Yeah. Well, I'd also I'd interviewed right beforehand too. So like, again, it was one of those things where like when I say cherish your friends, the movie theaters was right next to the mall I grew up at, and there's just before I had a car, I would just have to wait for a bus. But then there's sometimes where I would just go to the mall, hang out for a little bit. And I made friends with one of the guys who worked there, and he was about to head out for college, and he's like, "Hey, they're gonna need a replacement for me when you turn 17." I told him. He's like, "Cool. When that's hit 17, go talk to the boss there," and that's what happened. So again, like. Just it was a nothing thing, and I thought I would be there for a couple of years. I was there for 10 years, from the PS1 era right through the PS3. Did my first midnight launch with Halo 2, which was an absolute blast. It was really cool. It was a really, really cool experience, and I've made friends who I'm still friends with to this day. Some of which are still part of my Twitch community, who I've been keeping in touch with. It was a really, really, really good time. And again, it was an opportunity where I felt it was a place where I was safe. I was able to make friends there. Again, some who I'm still friends with to this day. And yeah, it felt like home. Like obviously it was retail and you deal with all the retail stuff. But for me, it was just like, I'm sure I have bad memories of working there, but I couldn't tell you just because that time meant so much to me. And they worked with my school schedule. So I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in psychology from St. Mary's back in San Antonio. And initially, I was going to go into like counseling psych. I was going to get my PhD, move to Seattle, become Frasier, get a dog, all that other stuff. That was the goal. But my last semester, I ended up taking a class in industrial psych, which is basically HR. It is just how to apply psychology in a workplace, and it just clicked for me. So we were learning how to do interviews. We needed seasonal help for the holidays. It worked out great. I learned about conflict resolution, all this kind of neat stuff. And I just knew, okay, this is going to be the thing I'm going to do. So I ended up leaving GameStop, and I'm going to the U. So I went to the Carlson School, got my master's degree in HR, class of 2009. And if anybody remembers what happened around 2008, 2009, that's when the economy sort of, yeah. Which meant finding a job was really difficult after that. And I had friends who graduated who had offers rescinded. I couldn't find a job to save my life. And I'm having to move back home. So like this is 100% true. Went to the U, got my the day of the graduation ceremony, walked the stage, got down, finished the ceremony, got in the car, and drove back to San Antonio. I just bolted. I just couldn't do it. Because it was hard because you see your friends, and obviously you're very happy for them, but like they're talking about their upcoming jobs and stuff, and then for the first few months of the whole like, oh my god, this company's sending me to London, this company's sending me to Australia, and I'm like, I went to Chili's for lunch. Like this is all right. Like it just felt just that really that initial feeling of just feeling real low, of just like I couldn't make it. Like I would apply for jobs for like it was a full-time job, and after about 6 months, still couldn't find anything. And I was also too ashamed even to go back to my friends, and even to tell them I was back. And after the 6-month mark, I decided to go ahead and just go back to the GameStop I worked at to say hi to my friends. And they're like, "Oh my God, you've been, how's it going? Where are you working at now? How are things?" And I told them the story, and they're like, well, "Wait, how long have you been back for?" And I said like 6 months. And they're like, "Why have you not come back here?" I was like, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't face you guys. And my boss said, "I never actually termed you from the system. I just put you on like unpaid suspension. I need a third key. You need a job. You start tomorrow." I gave me a key, and like, "Do you remember everything?" I was like, "Yeah," like I did for years. Like, "Yeah, so you start tomorrow." So again, you can choose your family, and please cherish your friends, because they will surprise you and they will amaze you and they'll save you too. So it took me about another few months to find a job, and then eventually I get my first actual job in HR working at Target back in San Antonio. And it's also the first job I got where I got an office too, which was like, oh my god, I feel like such an adult girl. Oh my god, it was so cool. First thing I did was I decorated the entire thing top to bottom. Like I went to Comic-Con and just took everything. Like there was like around this time, this is during the era of Assassin's Creed 2's first expansion or first sequel, Brotherhood. Yeah. Had a poster on the wall from I think it was from the collector's edition on there. Had a bunch of Tron stuff because I was super into Tron Legacy. Like just the whole thing looked up and down. But like people were like, "This is still Target, right?" And they're like, like it was always such a huge part of who I did. And I also want to share that too. And also it helped too because I do like I brought up in the beginning like we're talking to HR sometimes can be scary. It can be, but if you can like I try to show as much of my personality as I can, and because gaming is a huge part of who I am, I want to decorate it appropriately for it. And it also was kind of help as a nice icebreaker because somebody would walk by my office when I first started and they would see the Assassin's Creed poster and be like, well, you play? I was like, yeah, I do. And then it just made it easier and helped me kind of like transition into my new role a lot easier as a result. Did that for about a year and a half and it was fine. I mean, by this point I was ready to do something else that wasn't retail. And I ended up getting a job working at a hospital in St. Louis. So I worked at Barnes Jewish Hospital for about 2.5 years. And that's where actually, like, I felt like I started to really hone my craft, and where I saw like the real, genuine good you can do in HR. And same thing, I got an office, and top to bottom, like this is by this point, Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic had come out. I bought the collector's edition, put the poster up on there. By this point, Avengers had finished Phase 1. God, I can't remember. I still remember all this. And I took all the stuff that was in the collector edition, which was like in a giant briefcase, framed all of that, put it on all of my walls. And it was actually the first time where somebody kind of came into my office, my boss came in and saw all the stuff. Was like, you're kind of overdoing this, aren't you? It was all like, if I have more space, I'll add more. And she's like, you're kind of overdoing this. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry. But one thing at the times they also did, I actually got this feedback once, and this is the one of the few times where I've ever kind of pushed back a little bit on it was, where I was being too much myself, where it was just like I was so passionate about gaming, and I was just so at the time like super energetic. I guess I still am about it, and it was just they was kind of telling me like kind of tone it down. I was like, absolutely, I would not tone down who I am. Like I'm just I'm me, and like, but you're in a professional environment. Like you're at a hospital. There's people are sick around here too. There's sometimes things get serious. I was like, oh, okay. So it's like never not be yourself, but also recognize the environment you're in for too. I was like, okay, that's fair. So that was also kind of like a life lesson too of like, you can always still be you no matter where you are, but also keep in mind of your environments too. Keep in mind of like the surroundings you're around. Basically read the room as much as you can. But yeah, it was just like anytime there's like a new game coming out, somebody walk by like, are you picking it up? And be like, yes I am. So like when Knights of the Republic came out, the Old Republic came out, that's all I talked about for like about a good 6 months. But as much as I loved working there though, like being honest, I was broke. I was like living off ramen noodles and hot dogs. The place I moved into was a place I found off Craigslist that thank God was an actual physical location and not just like I drove up to the address and it would just be like an empty lot or something. So yeah, it was a hard decision, but it was also, I also knew how to move on. And that ended up moving me to Amazon, where I was there for about 5 years, which was a lot. But they moved me around quite a bit too. So I got to lived in Virginia for about 18 months, which was something. And then about a year and a half in, my mom died, and it was just time to go back home. So so I moved back to San Antonio, spent the next 3.5 years working there. And when I hit the 5-year mark, I kind of had this epiphany moment where somebody asked me, like, when you're there for 5 years, they'll put a little gold border around your badge. And somebody asked me, like, oh my God, you did it for 5 years. How could you have done it? How'd you do it? And I was like, I need to leave. It was just one of those moments, like, it just kind of that epiphany moment of, like, I realized I enjoyed the folks who I worked with. I appreciated the work that I was doing, but it was also, like, my passion wasn't in that. Like, it was just, it was still working. It was a fulfillment center. So it was just, I enjoyed, like I said, it was the people there, but it was just, I couldn't see myself doing that for another day. So, fortunately, I was pretty good with my money, and just went to my boss and was like, I'm gonna go. Like, I'll stay here till you find my replacement, but I'm done. So it lasted for another couple months after that 5-year mark, and then I took about a good 6-month hiatus, just to kind of get some rest and relaxation, and also figure out what it is I wanted to do. Throughout this entire time, from grad school all the way up through that point in Amazon, I had always kept applying for gaming companies. So it would always I always had like a LinkedIn search that said, human resources, video games, and then just applied where I could. At one point in grad school, my first interview was with EA. And when I tell you that was the worst interview, not of my life, but I think possibly ever, like, I want you to really let that factor in. I called the person by the wrong name a few times. Yep. It's always kind of a common courtesy. Send a thank you email. Thank you for your time. I enjoyed hope to hear back from you soon. Got the name right, spelled it wrong. Email back to say, hey, I'm so sorry, I misspelled your name. Still use the same wrong name. Emailed a third time to then correct it this time. Then went back to say, hey, going back to one of the questions you asked me, and then wrote an entire dissertation with a completely new answer, and then was shocked when I did not get an email back. Like, awful interview. Part of it was I was just super excited to be that a game studio was actually interested to talk to me, and the other part was also I had no idea what I was doing for interviews either. So, but eventually I do work my way back into healthcare. I moved to Dallas, Texas, actually Fort Worth, and I'm waiting for a friend of mine. We're at a bar, and he was running a few minutes late, and instead of flipping through Twitter or Instagram, I decided to go through that LinkedIn search, and I see an opportunity for Bandai Namco, and I'm like, okay, let's just try again. So I applied again, and fast forward a few months later, I'm at my first PAX East, that my Twitch mod at the time had invited me to go hang out at, and I was like, cool, I've never been to Boston before, and he offered to let me crash on his couch on the condition that he was super big into Pokemon Go at the time, but he was hosting a Pokemon Go pub crawl, and he needed help. So I was like, I don't like Pokemon Go, but I like pubs, so let's do this. That's also the night I learned that Patron makes a coffee flavor, and it's delicious. So I'm on my third sampling at that point, and my phone buzzes. I'm like, and I get the notification from Bandai saying like, "Hey, we'd like to meet with you," and I'm freaking out. Every bar I went to, I'm showing everybody because everyone's there at PAX. So like, if I tell them I got an interview with Bandai, they're like, "Oh my god!" Ah. So it was really cool, really supportive for that. And I got very fortunate where, like, again, by this point I've probably interviewed with 6 different companies along the way for it. But I finally got in, and I still remember during the interviews. So initially the first interview was done through phone. The second was done through Skype. And I've been streaming by this point for a couple of years now, so I already have like my entire background is my entire collection of statues. Like I have basically every Final Fantasy statue known to man. Quite a bit Witcher collection and everything like that. But it's all on display behind me, so that's what folks can see when they watch my Twitch stream. And that's also what I used for the first video interview with Bandai. And the recruiter like kind of like, all right, Chris, good to meet you. Oh my god! It just sees just like an entire store worth of inventory. It's like, so you do play games? I'm like, yes, I do. So we kind of have the conversation for it, and he was like, we actually are looking for somebody who doesn't have any actual industry experience, who's just like, we want somebody who's passionate about gaming, passionate about what they do for a living. Clearly, you have a passion for gaming. And I was like, yeah, I do. And good fortune smiled, and I ended up getting the job. And I was like, oh my god, I finally did it. Ended up moving to California, and COVID happened. So move up there, and it was an experience because everything was remote. So the entire time I'm up there, there's a couple times I would have to go to the office. It's completely emptied out. I just have to go there to like get the mail or something like that. it was weird to see like an empty office, like where you see everyone's statues around because like all these Gundam statues and Tales of stuff and Dark Souls and all that, and you're just like there's just nobody there. It just felt it was ominous, but at the same time still kind of beautiful because you can still see like you can walk around and you can just see all that passion that everyone had for their stuff there, and like it was generally like it was kind of like this beautiful sadness almost is the best way I can describe it of just like all this creativity and all this passion, all this energy, and with the purpose of just making people's lives a little bit better. And you know they could have taken their stuff home, but they didn't because they knew they'd be back and all this other stuff. But it was a heavy time. But I was there from about Little Nightmares 2 through Elden Ring. And then it was just kind of like I felt it was at that point it was just sort of time to move on professionally. And then they got me to my my current role here within Activision, and there's been a couple times in my life where like, and I'm sure folks have had this before, where you interview with somebody and they're would be potentially your boss, and you took that job for no other reason of you sit down with that person, you're like, I will work for you. And I had the very good fortune with that with Activision. Like I met their VP, who was just like right away was like, this is somebody who wants to do some real good here and wants to build a strong HR team, and it was just like the big privilege to be part of that mission and goal there. And yeah, it was kind of it's been kind of a wild ride now too. So I was still living in California, then they moved me down to Texas. So I lived in Austin, Texas for about 8 months. And then I had a peer who was up here in Minnesota, and her husband surprised her with a 10-year anniversary vacation. And they asked me like, hey, do you want to come up to Minnesota and just, you know, kind of hang out here while they're out? I was like, of course. And then after about a week there, they're like, you want to just move up here? And I'm like, it's like, well, I did go to grad school here. This is, and it's like, I can't think of a reason to say no. So now I'm here. So long way from a movie theater to here. Kind of a wild story for it, but the one thing I never lost throughout all the years, even though I've changed careers, I've changed industries a few times, really was my passion for gaming. Obviously, like all my tattoos are Final Fantasy 14 themed. Obviously, I'm wearing the hat and everything. But like especially for like a bunch of indie developers and folks like I know there's times where it can get frustrating, or when somebody tells you like, you know, why are you bothering with this thing, or what's the point? You might make something that is going to change somebody's life, and you don't know it. Like a lot of my life, like when I tell you the story for Cecil for 4, like had a profound impact on me. Like I do genuinely mean that. Like it was something that was so life changing and so impactful for me that it's kind of defined my life to a certain extent of just being like, you can be more than what somebody tells you that you are. You can be more than what you even think you can do. It takes a lot of hard work, and going through a lot of rough days, but like now I got the chance to go, like I got to go to PAX, and like I got to sit in front of folks and tell my life story, and then I got to do this here too. If I did what my parents wanted me to do, I would be the saddest doctor on the planet. Like they absolutely wanted me to go to med school and do all that stuff, and I would have been miserable. So yeah, and I kind of also recognize my story's also been it's a little bit like weird, just with the amount of times I've had to move and do stuff, and also still be like a Twitch streamer and do all the other stuff. But it also kind of taught me like there is no one right way to do something either. Like you figure out the way that works best for you. The last real major life lesson I always tell folks is follow your gut. There's times when you just like, I knew like when I got the opportunity to come here to Minnesota, because I got accepted to another program in Texas. I cannot tell you why I chose to go to the University of Minnesota other than just my gut told me like, you have to go. I had no idea that this was even a good school. Like genuinely and truly, I had no idea. Like I was actually flying up here. I was like, am I going to a good school? Or is this a party school? Is this like a technical, like where am I going? And I looked it up like this right at the start of Wikipedia, and they're like, it's got one of the best schools in the country for HR. I was like, oh, thank God. Okay. Oh, okay. I should also do some research on where you're going to go spend your life. Yeah. That was just kind of more like it validated my gut instinct for it. Like I said, when I was at Amazon, I knew when it was time to go. I could not tell you anything else other than just it was time to go. Like when I took the job here, it was just, it felt right. Like while you're working on your stuff, you know when something feels right and when to do it and when it doesn't feel right and when to walk away. Challenge yourselves. Don't be complacent with what you're doing. You'll be surprised what you can pull off. So that's my story. Thank you.
How can I contact you after this?
Sam has my link tree info, so it's all
Yep.
on there.
If it should be on our Eventbrite page, and we'll also add that in with our community plugs summary that I'm going to be posting to the channel for this meeting.
I couldn't find the Eventbrite page.
Gotcha. Let's see here. I'll have that posted in the Gamedev Meeting within the next like half hour.
It should also be, if you go into Discord in the events section, it should be, I think, linked there. If I remember.
I believe so.
Okay.
So what made HR in games different? Other experience.
Passion. Honestly, it kind of reminds me a bit of healthcare, where it's almost kind of feel like this calling. Like when I work with like the doctors, nurses, hospitals, you can see like they're there for patient care. They're there to take care of people. And for gaming, it's very much the same thing of just this. There's still that joy in making something and doing something like that makes somebody's life a little bit better out there. And you can see that in whether you're indie studio or AAA studio, like there are folks there who want to make something that's going to last and make something impactful. And every time I've talked to anybody who's worked in any either company I've worked for, it's always been that we want to do something good, which is also pretty more comforting to know there's still that heart and that passion behind it. Yeah.
I mean, have you been part of the kind of discussion about, like crunching games where it's like if people are there for passion, but then I guess if your manager knows that, they kind of like hold it against you. It's like, well, this is a cool job, so you better work, work like, harder. Like, if you could have been part of like that ongoing conversation about how reasonable it is to push employees in games.
So for questions like that, I'll be very transparent for it too. There's gonna be some stuff I genuinely cannot talk about, just for part of my and it's more of just like I will say the people who I work with generally do care about their employees and making sure that we provide the best experience possible for it too. But like I said, just be confidential or be upfront for that.
I don't have a question, just a comment. I just want to say, like, thanks for the talk. It's really validating to hear, like, how many times you had to try before you actually landed, like, the job you wanted.
Yeah.
I'm still in the midst of trying. I've had landed, like, interviews with big studios, and it's just nothing landed yet.
Yeah. Like, if there is a big secret with trying to get into the industry, it really is, there isn't one. It is just, it's persistence. It is, like, and you get, I always say, like, luck will always be a factor for it, but the harder you work, the less luck becomes that factor for it. Yeah.
So really liked your talk.
Thanks.
You talked a lot about hopping over the years between different jobs and in a way different paths.
Yeah.
I can empathize with that, and I'm trying to think of the right way to ask this. When I think back on some of the things that I felt uncertain about were then changes that I made, I really did feel like I learned more about myself through all that and how to kind of manage the relationship between who I am and what I want to do and how I want to work for or with other people or what I do or don't owe them. And like you can get into all sorts of weird games in your head with this stuff. So as someone who's been aspired to different things and hopped around different jobs, do you feel like you have any sort of easily articulated takeaways about things you've learned about yourself or about how you work or what you care about? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So one of the things I learned over the years is kind of what I mentioned earlier between some of the jobs I have where it's a supervisor or manager or leader who I'm like, where it just kind of clicks, and that makes a huge difference for it. I think it's one of the reasons why I've moved so many industries is because I met a leader who genuinely wants to do something for the industry that they're working in or for the company or healthcare facility, and I feel like I can learn a lot from them and I can do a lot of good. But yeah, it's I don't know. Like, that was kind of a hard question to your point. Yeah, it is just because it's.
I think it can be very personal what you have to learn.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Like normally I'm fairly introverted and fairly quiet. Like I'm usually the guy at a party. Like, and this is truly when I went to school here at the U, where a friend would throw a party. If they're busy like being a host and I don't know anybody there and they don't have a dog, I suddenly have a cold. I'm not feeling well, or I think there's something. Oh no. And I want to bounce out. Like I have my very very specific like kind of comfort zones for it, but doing this job and also even streaming on Twitch has helped me out quite a bit with realizing I'm stronger than I think I am, and that I can take these kinds of risks. Like, if you asked me even 20 years ago, would I do something like this? I would be terrified, absolutely terrified. But you start kind of realizing like the skills that you pick up throughout the course of your career can translate to other stuff. Like working HR, you teach classes, and that involves me in front of an audience. And like right now, this feels natural to me, honestly. Did anybody pick up my verbal or my visual tick though? Yeah, I caught it. Yeah, but you start to figure out stuff more about yourself, and then, but then you also start to realize like you've done a lot of stuff, and a lot of it's even the stuff you don't even think is that big of a deal. When you really look back and tell your story or like write it down, you start to realize like, oh, man, I've done some stuff. That I think that's the biggest lesson I think I've learned is that, and I hope that you walk away with is you are stronger than you think you are. Like you absolutely are. The fact that you're here, you didn't have to do this to be here.
Along that sort of similar line of thought, like as you were in some of those roles leading up to Bandai and just being more involved in games and HR, were there any particular people or communities that you found yourself like leaning on or keeping in touch with to stay like involved with, just sort of pursuing that passion? Like I know you mentioned like your Twitchmon friend who invited you out to PAX. Any other people like that stand out?
Honestly, a lot of them were my friends. Like especially working through GameStop. It's been 41 now. I started there when I was 17, so 23 years, and we still keep in touch. And like those days when I was feeling really low and just didn't know what I was going to do, especially after grad school and I couldn't find a job. Like they were, again, like my buddy didn't have to bring me back on board. He could have been like, well, good luck to you if you need, somewhere to talk. But he like just gave me a job back like that. It's nothing. But yeah, it was that was my biggest community that I leaned back on a lot. It genuinely was like my found family. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any tips on how to get your first game dev job?
That I do not know. So I've never actually done a game jam before.
Are you interested?
Game dev job. So the question again is, how any of us know how to get your first one?
First game dev job.
First game dev job. It is persistence. It genuinely is, and it is what part of it is figuring out what it is that you enjoy doing within as game dev, and then figuring out like, okay, if that position is not available, what is maybe the next adjacent one for it to, and it is persistence. It is that there, like I was mentioning earlier, like there's no secret like recipe. There's no like, oh, if you go to this website or something like that. It is just you keep trying, and eventually you get lucky and find a recruiter who sees your resume and sees something, and they're like, all right, we'll give you a shot, and then we'll get that interview, and then at that point, that's your time to shine. But yeah, it is. But it is finding that foot in the door, and then once you're there, work really hard. I know that sounds very it's almost like kind of cliche to say that. Fortunately, I apologize for that, but yeah, hard work and a little bit of luck. So, yeah, question.
I was wondering, what were the skills you developed or like takeaways from streaming? Because I can imagine at one side it's like if you're introverted, like was streaming intimidating first, then it became kind of natural, or like, did you that? Kind
I was super nervous. My first couple of Twitch streams, I did not even have the camera on because I was just like, oh my god, nobody else is this. But yeah, it taught me how to be more comfortable in front of a camera. The other thing was also it taught me how to improv quite a bit too. Because there's times when does anybody else here stream on Twitch? You do a little bit, yeah. Like there's times when something happens on the audio freaks out, your camera like falls off the camera. Like I do cooking streams too, so there's times where like I have to move the cameras around and something gets unplugged, and it'd be really easy to get frazzled and be like but it's just you just breathe. Yeah, then you start realizing like, okay, like it's very much baby steps. Like you start with, okay, now I'm gonna turn on the camera. Okay, now like I'll be also kind of transparent too. Like so, I also like had struggles with my hair for a while. Like a lot of my Twitch streams when I first started, I always wore a hat. For the simple reason of just like this is not an aesthetic choice. This was just admitting. So I was always super self-conscious for to show like even myself without a hat on, and then eventually like I just kind of realized it was time to bite the bullet and just like and like I showed it to my Twitch community and they were super welcoming, like, oh my god, it looks so good. But it was also like, so you can take those little risks too. Like again, like if it wasn't for Twitch, I probably would still be making an effort with that. So yeah, it like streaming does teach you a lot, gives you the value of like baby steps, and you're always kind of like always improving, always trying to learn something new, trying to do something a little bit different, stuff like that. Yep.
So have you ever considered like maybe trying to make a game yourself or with people?
No. So when I was really, really young, I thought I was gonna be like a writer. Then I realized I could read a lot of books, and I don't read a lot of books. So even my part of my job is quite a bit of writing, and I had fiction ideas in my head, but I could never really like put them to paper. But that being said, I can write like a legal briefing. I can write stereo instructions like nothing. Like I can write very well technically. But yeah, that part's not really me. Once.
I have two sort of, if it seems like we're kind of winding down, two short questions.
Yeah.
Favorites. What's your favorite thing about your current job that you're in? And on your cooking streams, what's your favorite dish you've made recently?
Generally is the people who I work with. Like when I tell you these are some of the kindest, most understanding folks I've ever had the pleasure of working with. I mean that with full sincerity. Like this is not just because it's on YouTube or whatever. It is. They are genuinely wonderful people. And also that's what made me stay for a lot of places. I think even looking back my time at Amazon, like I stayed there for the 5 years. Partially was being very transparent to complacency, but the other part was like I worked with some really good folks, and it was just fun to go there every day. But everything that I made recently, I made some s'mores cookies about a month ago, 2 months ago. But yeah, like graham cracker marshmallow, homemade chocolate chip cookie that were on top, wrapped around. Yeah, really good.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your Twitch handle? I don't think that's ever.
It's also gonna be on the links too, but it's Vanispheres.
I did post the link tree I found. I posted it to the Discord.
Nice. Yeah, that's me. All right.
Oh, we got one.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Hi.
Last question. I don't know if you said this already, but when was your moment where you turned from a Dark Knight to a Paladin?
Oh, that's really good. Oh wow. I love that question. Thank you for asking that. Honestly, I think it was grad school. Because again, like I applied to that school, and then I also applied to the one in Texas, and my mom at the time was telling me like, so you're gonna go to Texas, right? And I was like, I don't know. And it was a little bit of that pressure of like, but you're right here. You'll be only a couple hours away, and you if you ever get scared, you have a safe place to come back home to. I was like, and like the way I kind of grew up was in a where you were always like by the family, like you're always like within driving distance. You're always within a phone call away, etc. And Minnesota, I didn't know. I actually have a cousin who lives up here, but for the most part, though, I was going to be relatively solo, and like it just like I said, that gut instinct of like this is what I need to do. And it was the first time where I ever actually said like no to my parents, like no, this is what I'm going to do, and got some guilt trips out of that. And they start asking the question like, well, how are you going to pay for school? Like I got some loans and some grants and some scholarships. Like, well, how are you going to live there? It's like off those loans, scholarships, and grants. Like, what are you going to do for your books? Loan. What happens if you run out of loans? Like, I will get another one. But it was just that you can kind of tell there's that pressure to like, this is not a good idea. You should definitely come back home. But it was just that little bit of defiance to say like, no, this is not like I'm not going to be doing just what you always want me to do. I'm going to do my own thing here. I think from there that was like I think when I also realized like anytime that she had like a question for me like why are you doing or like did you find a roommate or anything like that, I eventually started having the answers for them too, and then there's really like I had enough of my act together where there really wasn't a question anymore. Like it just made a lot of sense. And then telling her like after the fact, like this is also one of the top schools in the country. Like, why would I say no to this? And like it's gonna be further my education. Like, yeah, good point. And it's like it was one you can tell very hesitant about it, but that first act of defiance, like saying like I can do my own thing. I'm very glad I did it. So yeah, met a lot of great people as a result of it too. So that's a good question. That's a really, really good one.
Have to make its way into your speech.
Have to now, yeah. Oh, go ahead. All right. Yeah, thank you. Again, you guys have my link tree too, so you want to reach out more too. Thank you.
You already.
Yeah.
So you can conduct. I'll just be your.
Thank you again, Chris, for providing your wonderful talk. It was very nice to hear. Very exciting. For people who have come in a little later,
Just an overview of what we're going to do now. Game plan is with the Nice Games Alliance nonprofit organization that's been started. We have a couple different thoughts, directions we could go in, questions, and some discussions we'd like to be continually having with the community to make sure that we're getting as much input from our people who we want to have this organization present to serve. So we've got a couple different things that we're going to go through here. So can I? Okay. I'm so good at using a touch screen. Let's go. I actually am. But we'll kind of have this section open for free-form discussion for however long that ends up taking us. And then once things wind down, we will be making our way over to Max, which is literally outside the main door onto Hennepin. To the left, like before you hit,
4 doors down.
yeah, 4 doors down.
We all hold hands.
Literally, yeah. Skip. Yeah, it looks like a pub. It's got like a gear logo for it. We'll be going there once our discussion is kind of wound down for food, socializing, and further discussion. So if we can get maybe a preemptive head count of people who are interested, we can then put in a call for just in advance roughly how many people will be grabbing tables for. So,
Yes.
I was okay.
When I point at you, put your hand down. Is this the going to the place?
Yes, going to food after discussion.
About 15, 16.
Party. Cool. We'll round up to 20. Yeah. Right, somewhere in that ballpark. Only time will tell. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, generally nonprofit organization. In April, a few members of our current IGDA board put this together, basically to get around some of the issues that we've had with the parent organization, and specifically regarding getting funding to put on events, have spaces that are not just owned by members of the current IGDA board, et cetera, et cetera. We've got all different sorts of things that we're trying to do to basically elevate the elevate what we want to have done and the services we want to be able to provide to our community. We have a full mission statement right here, which I won't read through the whole thing because we'll have a whole couple of slides to go through. But basically how it's set up and how it currently works is it is not the same organization as IGDA-TC, but even though the leadership is currently very, very similar, the main difference is being that IGDA Twin Cities' board is elected by the community, and we want that to continue to be the case. So as like election cycles go through over the years, we expect like the layout and the members of our board to change over time. Whereas with Nice Games Alliance, the board of directors are elected by its board using the standard nonprofit bylaws process, which we want to keep as a very necessary distinction to make sure it's not just a couple of us people kind of running things with now having 2 organizations that we're kind of both like sock puppet controlling. The goal of Nice Games Alliance being to raise money from individuals, corporations, governments. We kind of went over that. To provide things like workshops and educational resources, scholarships, community projects, and we're interested in putting together a game developers conference, or just general interactive arts conference, TCAC, as we're calling it currently. We have a party planning committee, which is very open. We're interested in, is similar to the volunteers for IGDA. If you're interested in potentially helping something like that go on, if you have ideas for workshops or services skills that you might be able to provide, if you have like informative talks, things like that, we would love to get your input and or help in putting something like that on. But our main goal starting today is that it's just going to be an organization that will help fund IGDA-TC's events and activities. So for the community, pretty much nothing is going to be changing like for you day to day. For now, Nice Games Alliance is just going to be the sponsor of IGDA-TC, and the board of IGDA-TC will always be the people directing the programming for that organization. Whereas Nice Games Alliance is now going to be the most direct way you can support this community, which we'll get into more in just a sec. But rather than providing funding through kicking money to our parent organization, which then in theory gets sent back to us, in theory.
An untested theory as of yet.
Yes. Instead, this is essentially a more direct way of providing that funding, ensuring that it actually does end up in our hands, ensuring that it can go back to the community, rather than having to hope that it does. So the other thing with Nice Games Alliance that provides a service for us that we had not had before is that as a chapter of IGDA, we were not able to do many of the things that you would expect from a normal nonprofit. So now through Nice Games Alliance, having this organization, we now have the ability to rent and purchase things without taxes, pay presenters, service providers, and contractors once we get the infrastructure and funding up and running for it. This has all been put together in, say, the last couple months, and we've officially gotten the documentation for it like in early, like October. So this is like the first kind of questions that we're asking to get a sense of what our community's interests are. But with it, we can also do things like owning and selling equipment and assets, including intellectual property, resources, discounts, and opportunities only afforded to nonprofit organizations, things like that. We can now do the things that a nonprofit can do rather than existing and trying to find ways to do everything for free. So we have a bunch of questions pertaining to the future that we would love to get community input on, because it's going to be really important as we're going forward what this relationship is going to continue to look like, how we want things to develop or stay the same or change. Some of the biggest questions being, should we continue to be an IGDA chapter? And some follow-up questions of, if yes, what could we do to make it a more valuable association? Or if not, what would really change? The biggest thing being the IGDA board being an elected standing subcommittee of Nice Games Alliance, running essentially the exact same way it does, but just under a different flagship. And if we are making a strong decision one way or another, how do we want to decide it? I'd like to take a quick sidebar. Show of hands, who
here is this your first IGDA event that you've ever attended here in the Twin Cities? No. I would love to get just your input on like how impactful the branding or name of IGDA, like did that association provide anything when you were looking for this event or looking for, depending on what you've come here for, if you had found us through Eventbrite, things like that. Was the IGDA association or name something that was helpful to you?
When I was getting my undergrad, it was mentioned all the time, like, oh, if over the Twin Cities is IGDA. And I really forgot about it until like a few days ago, and I was like, wait a second, that exists. I should go check that out.
Okay, cool.
So it was definitely the branding that made me remember that. Should search it up. So
okay.
This isn't my first event. I've been coming for about a year, but when I was looking to finally reach out to other game developers, I was watching like a GDC talk or something, and they call that IGDA. And I wonder if there's a local chapter, and that's how I ended up coming to. So it does actually.
It made you seem like trustworthy because you have like a board and all this stuff. So it's like, okay, they're actually putting in work and like.
Yes. Go team.
I was just like a GDC talk, and like they like shouted out like IGA, like said to like find like a little chapter.
Okay.
So definitely.
Word. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
So discoverability.
Yes. So that being one of the main benefits, and honestly a big reason with why we've stuck with GA for the. Oh,
I was gonna say exactly the same thing. I've been here for years now, but when I first started coming here in 2019, when I was still living in Rochester, so this was an hour and a half drive commitment sort of thing. That was part of what convinced me to give this its first shot. Like, oh, this feels official-ish and it's an organization, so it seems like the right kind of thing to start getting feedback in the game dev community. And yeah.
okay. Yeah. Thank you everybody just for kind of all of this feedback, thoughts as we're trying to get a sense of what the important things are with this. With that, like as we're going into 2025, we're kind of trying to consider if new programs and resources that we are using Nice Games Alliance money or resources to fund and put on, if that should exist under IGDATC, how associated things that are being created with Nice Games Alliance would people be interested in seeing it be with IGDATC? Do people have a strong preference or care very much in that regard?
As for like individual things, I don't know that that's all as important. I know that losing the IGDATC brand entirely, I don't think that's a good move, just simply because how many people discovered just that.
Right.
And, I don't know how closely coupled we are to IGDA right now. It seems like not very much, other than using the branding and trying to keep a good relationship with them. So in my opinion, it's not that important in individual events, but so
okay.
Just keeping it.
Yeah, I'd say go for it until the Paranorm gets mad at us. And I don't think they have the capacity, like, to get upset about something like that organizationally. So we're here doing genuinely good things. So
right on.
Also, it's full logo.
Yeah,
that was a big point of discussion.
Come up with a better.
Our logo is our logo. It belongs to us.
And we really do like it.
Is tell the story of how Beth dreamed it up.
Oh, yeah, Beth had like a fever dream. That's went through me, and then it ended up what it looks like now with our twin stars.
That's great. That's how a lot of our governments end.
Yeah.
So someone has a dream about it, and then it happens.
That was the IGDA vote. I guess I never looked it up.
And then we all just vote on it, and everybody says yeah.
Cool. I don't change it.
Yeah. But with other things, like as we now kind of have this avenue that we want to start developing for providing more resources, gathering funding, and putting on workshops, events, or just buying pizza, I'm curious, what are some things that you guys would like to see happening first? Like what our priorities should be. If you would be interested in seeing this be something that could develop this community into something much bigger, having funds to be able to hire employees or have a permanent space that is used for co-working or event hosting, things like that. There are so many different things that could happen. Love to hear if there's any services that y'all would be particularly interested in seeing being provided, knowing this information.
Honestly, other than pizza, conference is going to be one of the biggest things that I would have been interested in seeing. So glad to see that's already being thought of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of the apartment space, like the really big space that we had for a long time. It was really cool.
No, you said a permanent space.
It's a pseudo permanent space.
Yeah.
So what would such a space be used for outside of the event per week?
That's a good question.
Well, if there's employees, people with jobs. What would the employees be used for outside of the event per week?
Applying.
What would the grant money be used for outside of the event per week?
No,
I'm serious. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just saying,
What's the buy? Working it out.
I think
What's the buy-in? Why should people care? What's the image?
I think what it is that that kind of drills down to the fact that running a program now takes a lot of volunteer effort and a lot of volunteer money. Like, for example, like I operate this space and I donate its use for anything. That's an in-kind donation.
we don't have a dollar value for that, but it would be tens of thousands of dollars, right? For like the amount of events we're gonna be hosting this year here. Like, I'm not gonna create an invoice for that, but that's the kind of thing that, we have always gotten by on bank borrowing and stealing, and if we were to basically go legit, it would be great to be able to pay for some things, so we're not relying on essentially the generosity of individuals, because that can be both tenuous and also very stressful for those individuals. It also means that if you want to get involved, but you don't have resources to provide, that can be internal. And maybe you have great ideas and be a great leader. But if you don't have a space to offer like I do, like that's not fair. It keeps you out of the conversation, you know. But if we have an infrastructure and revenue, then but it's still a group, you know, there's a long way to get there.
And there's a bajillion different ways that we could approach finding a permanent space as well, whether that's working with an existing organization, trying to find a space that would sponsor us regularly for funding, which we would then be gathering from sponsors and whatnot, or if we were looking into finding a space and developing it as its own thing for if we get robust enough for programming, for workshops and other sort of community uplifting events and whatnot.
Could be used for co-working, and that could be grant funded, so it could be scholarship based, so we could have 6 months to work, you know, on a project. But that would be funded through grants, and that would be great if we could offer that. But otherwise, we have to subcontract.
Yeah, something I pointed out in the discussion in the Discord too was that like similarly like that was kind of like Glitch's business for a while too. Is they had like a space and they did you could rent a desk there and they did their events and I think they got grants. And so like the model can work. I don't know if like that's we'll just do what they did is our model. But it seems like it could work.
Yeah.
I guess personally, the thing I get most out of this is the networking and the meeting people in the community and whatnot. Because I feel like personally, I would say whatever we do ought to be in the name of like sustainability. So like if you're having somebody to pay Mark or whatever makes sense, like whatever contributes to the sustainability of the operation, I think is probably ideal. I mean, if we have big dreams, that's that'd be cool. But then with the undercurrent of like, but not in a way that if it blows up, then the whole thing's gone.
Not if it tanks like our main game dev meeting, or if our priorities shift from that. Right. Yeah. I guess. Do you have any more?
I think like the big question, it's interesting to hear from people who are new, who like found this. I think a lot of us did here, the old timers as well. But independent of that, what does the IDGA mean to you?
It's a way to get my feet off the ground.
I mean, I suppose because you add the word international to Nice Games, International Nice Games lines. No, that's pretty good.
There we go. Now we're official. Now we're
Game developer is like what I use. So
Yeah.
get that,
It's huge. It really is a big deal.
Yeah.
And discoverability really, even if it's nothing else, it's a big deal.
Yeah, having that, and like I'll echo what other folks said. It does have kind of this air of officialness.
Yeah.
Official.
and like even just speaking on my own experiences, I feel like I've had that sort of experience, like speaking with other people like game development events, not relative to the Twin Cities, like mentioning IGDA, I feel like does provide at least some semblance of connection, given that like a lot of people have chapters throughout the area. As far as like the services that it's providing for like day-to-day events, I feel like it feels less and less like a priority, but there is something with the name, and I feel like that's been always a big part. That's honestly been one of the biggest things of why we've stuck with it.
Who here is an IDGA member?
I was. I can talk.
I mean, I think it expired after the year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so my experience with the parent organization is probably less enthusiastic than you might think. And
Less
yeah, like Mark's too polite to say anything. And maybe I don't know. So 10 years ago, I was going to like the GDC IGDA meetings where they have members of the IGDA who can talk to the board, and it had been a recurring theme even after the entire board cycles in and out that the parent board loses money, like loses donations, they fail to keep track of it. They fail in their responsibility to do what they've said they're going to do with providing resources to their children orgs, to individual chapters.
You're blessed children.
Yeah.
Sweet babies.
Like I don't think there's any bad intent with whoever ends up on the board there, but they've also failed to like represent they've been astonishingly out of step with the people of the organization too, because they have different interests to represent. Because at the parent org level, they're getting large amounts of funding from big companies, AAA game developers, where the relationship is a lot different from the relationship that we have in cities where there are, a couple huge studios, and the huge studio is kind of running the IGA chapter, and and they are also funding the parent org. So, you go to the IGDA meetings at GDC if you ever get the opportunity, and people there are like, hey, we want IGDA, the chapter, to stand up and say, like, hey, we don't want to work crazy crunch hours. Like, you're a professional organization representing people who are working in the game industry, and we're saying, like, issues around crunch time is important to us, and they're saying, no, we're not touching that, because we're getting funding from people who don't want us to touch that. So, like, that's like, I'm not a member anymore. I got my new keyboard or whatever that they were giving me, that kind of stuff. So, fortunately, like, they don't have any sway over us, I feel like, for our policies, but they don't align with my personal views generally. And, like, the board, it cycles in and out. You get different people at the parent organization, but I haven't really seen any motion that made me feel better about it.
Here, no taxation without representation.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like that's been kind of one of the biggest motivations for forming this nonprofit. There's been a bunch of just personal recent issues with attempting to get funding that theoretically should have been provided from chapter dues that our members pay and that go towards the organization, which we are then in theory able to pull on for funding and support for things that we're doing. And with, like, how long has the process been so far? Like a year?
I mean, it's measured in eons.
I mean, that's not the first time that they've messed up funding.
Yeah.
Like, this is before Mark's time, even maybe. That they.
I mean, I'm surprised we learned about this free keyboard. That's
I know. Now I'm backtracking.
I mean, that was an in-kind donation by, like, Razer or whatever,
Sure.
right? Like, how can Razer help promote IGDA?
Yeah. Pieces of the IVD, remember, there's independent from your community stuff. Like, there's a Dell website to get this kind of stuff. Geez, the tickets are cheap. It's not like a ton, but like for $100 for 2-year membership, like if you engage with their benefits, it does pay off. But at the community level, it's been very difficult to justify. But I think to maybe not to end the conversation, but to sort of recap it so far, one of the things about this big question that's been hanging over this community for a long, long time is, like, we never really felt the authority to really do anything about it without buying. So that's why we're asking questions. It's also why the elections process is really important. The big question for the new board when it sits, whether it's the same people or whether there's new people in it, is going to be like actually answering this question and like set. Because it's been a really long time. And I think we've been going slow and that's been good, but everyone's anxious to decide. We just want to make sure everyone's voices is heard, and we don't miss out on views, like people who the discoverability of it is still really important, and we have to protect it.
Yeah, just like echoing that sentiment, like it's going to be a slow process as we're meeting to discuss and review essentially feedback that you all are generously providing right now, and deciding based on the information that we've been given what to do about it. So it's going to be a slow process, and there probably won't be any large actions taken until, at the very least, our new board is fully elected, which won't be until March. So all of this stuff is important to keep in mind, but we'll be kind of continuing to ask these questions over and over at future game dev meetings. We'll probably do a couple more online things for feedback. And if you're interested in providing any further feedback, like if you think of it something later, or if you didn't feel comfortable sharing like out loud in person today, or if you just wanted to send us a recap of your thoughts from the meeting, feel free to send that via a DM to any of our board members or to our email at igdatwincities@gmail.com. Those are all perfectly valid ways of continuing this conversation.
And I believe there's a public Discord channel.
Yes.
About
Yes,
this.
there-
Any discussion?
There's a whole section on our Discord dedicated to an info channel with a bunch of text about what that channel or about kind of what the services being provided or hoping to be provided are, and some of those big questions. And then we've got a discussion channel as well where people can pitch their ideas, thoughts, feedback, personal experiences, anything like that.
That's for this big question, but also for Night Games Alliance in general.
Yeah. So like if you have thoughts of like things that you think would be awesome to see, but wouldn't be possible without funding, that's a perfect area for you to say, hey, it would be so cool if you did a game developing, like a game jam and ice cream night, things like that.
So write that down.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be about to ask, is there a written list of things that people would want that we could kind of keep?
Make that make that like a slip box, some kind of suggestion box.
I feel
There's
like
been bullet points, but I think
compile
you're right to ask for something that's central.
Yeah.
And that hasn't been made yet.
right. Because with this also we've kind of that is I think probably going to be our very next steps, just as we're trying to get a sense of what is desired from the community, and that will sort of influence prioritization. But that'll be coming soon.
If I could offer a suggestion, since we recently changed our Discord over to the community, whatever that's called, the same way we've got the games laid out, it's like individual forum posts. We can do the same thing with suggestions, so that they can have entirely self-contained conversations about each suggestion, rather than it being a flood.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I will put something in the Discord for that, like tonight or tomorrow.
Responsive.
And if this is your first meeting, sorry they don't all have this much meta discussion.
Yeah, honestly,
We're eating
I feel like with this being my like second year now of rounds of like being in attendance here, I feel like January has tended to be the longest meeting in terms of preamble and post-amble. Usually our intro slides run like 10 minutes. I tried to
keep better before Mark came here.
we cut some slides.
We should just abolish these slides in general. Just
Elections coming up, Global Game Jam, Night Games Alliance, a lot going on.
a lot of big changes and
Yeah.
lots of recurring things that happen in the month of January. So there's kind of a lot to slog through. So we appreciate everybody sticking it out with us. Do we have any other just general thoughts, questions about anything related to anything that's been brought up tonight?
Just a quick thought, so like I joined 6-7 months ago, and I feel like part of my impression was like it was more legit than I thought it would be. It's probably a good problem to have, but like maybe just in terms of like number of new people, number of existing people, like people working on cool things, it's just like a sense of like more vibrant than I thought it would have been. And so I'm wondering like I don't know like how you like for example like people continue to be photographed or something like, but like having more simple indication of like oh yeah we're actually like a big group that does the scale of it. Yeah.
Are you sort of like suggestions of like ways of like more visibility?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know where people see it. It's like I found it through this podcast actually.
Oh really?
But I was trying to think of like how whether we keep IGDA or not. Like when people encounter it, like getting across how legit it is.
Right, kind of giving a more clear image of what the organization looks like.
Yeah,
things like that. I guess for our first timers here, where did you find us through? Was it through just like a quick Google search? Google?
College.
Yeah,
like I was watching like this.
Nice, and then just like searching IGDA near me. Awesome. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so that's perfect. No, love it.
It's true.
Love that. Yeah. Okay, so this is all important stuff to know. Did any of y'all at any point come across our Eventbrite or our community Discord? Was there an order of operations in which any of that happened?
Yes, I saw Eventbrite after I searched up the name on Google, and then I saw the Discord, and I'm like, I bet the Discord's way more active than Eventbrite. So
Thank you. Yes, glad to hear. Yeah. Same deal. Okay, awesome.
Actually, for me, it was Google Maps. It was searching game companies in whatever, and it was Double Robot. And I was like, oh, Double Robot, what's that? And, you know,
Oh, okay.
there. So I'm actually gonna put like a.
And then found the podcast.
Yeah, it's like
Incredible.
So I guess you get like pictures of the events on the Google Maps.
Right. I guess that's a good idea.
Yeah, it syndicates from it. I think that's the reason it ends up in Google search. It's weird how cross-pollinate.
Yeah, but I appreciate the suggestion. I think that's definitely something we could be doing a better job of. That's originally what I was in charge of when I got on as a volunteer, and I've been yapping. If you're interested in doing social media, we got a volunteer space. Talk to us. Doesn't have to be a decision made now, but always opportunities for things like that.
Okay, who wants food?
Alrighty.
Well, before we sign off, I want to say that the nomination form is up now. Shared in the announcement channel. It's not on the website yet, but it's not my fault. It's being a butt. There's not for everyone. Or everyone say again. Yeah.